Where we at? Yeah, introducing my third colour here. So we're doing I'm doing the backpack in purple. Again, apologies for the crappy camera angle on that. It's a nice picture of my hand there. It does get better, I promise you. So yeah, straps of this backpack in a light purple. What would you call that? Violet? Lilac? Something. Anyway, light purple. So I'm just doing it in like that. Yeah. Okay, now slightly darker shade, just to push these bits backwards, back into the background a little bit. There we go. Just darken that a bit. It's got a ridge in the middle of it there, so you can see I'm just doing it to push that ridge. Christ. One day I'm going to get rid of this cough. Push that back a bit. There we go. We want to do a bit up top as well. That's a crappy angle, isn't it? And well, you have to take my word for it that I'm pushing that bit into the background as well. You'll see it in a second. There you go. I've left a tiny bit, can you see I've left a tiny bit of reflected light at the top there as well. Which by the way, a lot of what we do in art and cartooning particularly, because this is cartooning, obviously because it's not realistic, a lot of what we do is artistic license, because that's not really what a light would do, but it's enough to fool the eye, particularly in cartooning, in sort of more realistic, if that's what you call it, art, like comic art or photorealistic art or anything. They don't do that. They do exactly as you'd see in life, whereas we have loads of tricks in cartooning to make things look as if they are real when they're not. Okay, now cool greys I've got there, 4 cool greys, a CG1, CG2, CG3 and a CG4, because I'm going to do the glasses now. And there's a trick to doing the glasses. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to take my CG2, I'm going to lay down an overall base fill. There you go. This is a base fill. You do this when you're painting as well. For those of you painting graffiti, you always paint the base fill first, and then you build on your base fill from there. So I'm putting my base fill in there. There you go. So that's a CG2 all the way along. Next thing, is it CG2? No, it's a CG1. Sorry, wrong. CG1. So now I've got CG2, and I'm pushing these bits back, using a bit of shade to push certain bits. And this is, so I don't worry about the glasses for now. I'm just looking at the ridges, contours of his face, looking how I can put them into the background. So there we go. Darkening that bit there. Darkening all that. So just pushes it backwards. Pushes it further back. You can see that, can't you? Go on. A little bit in there. I don't do a lot of detail with alcohol markers because of the nature of them. Because they, if you can use the fact that they run a little bit when you get used to them, and you start to master them a bit. You can actually use the fact that alcohol blends and runs into other bits of alcohol and all that kind of stuff. But if you do detail, it runs in places that you don't necessarily want it to. So you've got to be careful. Okay. So there we go. Just a bit of darkening there as well, and a bit up there, just to denote the fact that that's in shade. Okay, good. Right. So that was a CG2. Notice I'm not really blending at the moment particularly, because I can use hardline shading. Yeah, this is a CG3. So I'm pushing that bit even further back in. I'll just do that up to there, because that pushes it back, makes the shadow more intense just there. because you don't necessarily want the shadow to be nice and uniform. Shadow is not uniform. If you look at it in real life, shadow varies depending on how much light an object is getting hit with. You get a gradation of shadow. There we go, tiny bit there. And now, there we go. So they're looking fairly acceptable now. That looks fairly acceptable. You could probably leave it there, to be honest, but I never would. I'd always do a bit more. A little bit in there. There you go. A bit darker still. So I'm up to CG4 now. This is my darkest colour. So this is just tiny bits of low lights, tiny bits, tiny little bits. There you go, just to push it right back. And you could leave it there. If you wanted to do them glasses like that, you could leave that. Just put some shines on them later with a bit of white paint, white Molotov or white Posca. But I'm going to do a bit more. Just going to do a little bit more on them because I want to tint them. I want a little, excuse me. Just choking to death. That's nice, isn't it? Push that bit there back. Darken that because that's further back, obviously. Don't forget them bits. Push that further back. But yeah, I want to tint the glasses as well. You'll see in a second. I'm just going to blend that so it's not uniformly one colour. There, don't want it to be one colour. I want it to be a bit darker up top because of the brim of his hat. Because the brim of that hat technically is covering all that. I'll come to that later in a minute. I'll explain what I'm going to do with that. Because obviously, if the primary light source is coming off the right hand side, it's going to be affected by the brim of that hat. So what I'm doing now, I'm just pulling down very, very quickly and lightly. One colour you'll notice, going again. Because I'm tinting these glasses now. Doesn't matter, you can see the strokes, doesn't really matter. And again, that's the third time over. And again, that's the fourth time over. You see how much more pigment gets laid down when you go over. There you go, just another one. So that's 5 times I've gone over that there. Do the same on this one, not as much probably, because it doesn't need as much. 3 times, there you go. 4 times, there you go. Now I'm going to go in with a darker colour, just up top, in a tighter area up the top there, just a darker colour, just to tint it a little bit more, a bit up top there, and that's all that needs really, just to tint them glasses more. And then later on I'll put my shines on there. Don't put your shines straight on until the alcohol's dried, otherwise it won't be pretty. Now he's got the colouring of a, I mean, he could be a cat or a dog really, couldn't he? But in my mind he is actually a dog. So he's got the colouring, he's got a sort of white muzzle and he's got a grey rest of his face. So I'm just greying the rest of his face here. So that's the base fill on the rest of his face. There we go. And now I need a darker colour because that's a shadow under the, what do you call that? The bridge of his glasses. His glasses will leave a shadow there, and a little bit there, just to blend that a little bit. There we go. And a bit there, just because, why not? Now, this hat. Now you can see where I'm going to put the shadow from to the brim of his hat. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about artistic license. That is not where that shadow would fall, but I don't want it to fall any lower than that because it will mess up the rest of the detail in the pic. I don't want it to get over his brows and stuff like that. I don't want that. So it doesn't really matter because overall in the picture you won't care. All you care about is that there is a shadow. Blend that a little bit there. There we go. A little darker, just to sort of that's called a transitional shadow. There, you're going from dark to light, or you're going for a secondary light source into a primary light source. There you go. Just darken that a little bit so I can grade that shadow a tiny bit. There we go. That's a mid-grade. That's a mid colour, just to sort of kill that hard line. I don't want a hard line in there. And that's enough. It's enough to fool the eye. That's all it needs to be. Just needs to be able to fool the eye, create a bit of depth, and there you go. That'll work fine. Bit under there, because that's going to be a heavier shadow. And that's it. You don't want to start killing detail with shadows and stuff. I mean, we've all made that mistake. You know, you put far too much shadow on, and it might be realistic even, but you end up killing the stuff you've already done. You think, well, I've just done a load of detail and it's taken me an hour to do, and now it's all dead. It's all covered in grey, or whatever colour you do, or black particularly. You know, if you start covering stuff in black, I think early on we all use too much black. As artists, you know, we put loads of black on stuff and it absolutely kills it. So I'm just putting a bit, again, that's not a realistic shadow under there, it's just a hint of something, because that's not where the shadows would fall, because the glasses, if you look at them, they wouldn't wrap around like that either. But it's all artistic license. It's just artistic license. Most cartooning is, you know. It's not real. There we go, a bit on there. Now, that's looking a bit hard-edged to me there. I probably should have used a much lower grade of grey. Yeah, I'm using neutral greys for this bit, and I probably should have. That's an NG2 I've got there. That's the lowest colour I've got. I should have used an NG1 really, because that would have given me a better blend into white, because white is very white, as you can see, and NG2 is actually, you know, because there's an NG0 and NG1 before an NG2, so you've got a couple of grades below that to blend that, and that it's not a great blend, to be honest with you, but it doesn't really matter. So these are the this is a zip. I need to push that a little back a little bit so you can see the shadow cast in there. That's a hard line shadow because it's not too far from his muzzle there. A little bit along the bottom of the zip there. There we go. Just want to darken that on the left hand side because there's less light hits that bit. There we go. Just a tiny detail, but them tiny details can really matter later on. A little bit in there. Just darken that on that side because there's even less light there.